Okay, let's just jump right in. We're going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the book of Leviticus today in this explainer. Look, if you're like most people, you probably read those ancient chapters on defilement and think, okay, this is just some outdated public health manual. But actually, we're going to look through some specific master lenses today that reveal a terrifying and honestly glorious architectural blueprint of reality itself.
So you might assume these ancient purity laws are just, primitive dermatology, but the text is actually mapping out a high-stakes battleground. We are absolutely not looking at a medical clinic here. We're looking at cosmic geography. It's a literal war between sacred participatory communion and the forces of anti-creation.
To decode this whole architecture, we're going to equip you with 5 master lenses. We'll cover the cosmic battleground, the procedural civilization, the heavenly courtroom, cosmic exorcism, and finally, the ultimate inverted theater.
All right, Part 1. The Cosmic Battleground, Unmasking the True Nature of Ancient Defilement. Let's look at the actual threat facing the portable Eden of the Israelite camp, because to understand the rules, we really have to understand the enemy.
What modern translations weakly call leprosy is actually the Hebrew word tzara'ath, and the biblical text flat out refuses to let us read this as mere dermatology. It's an aggressive chaos. Think of it as an active ontological fracture. It acts like a literal tear in reality, threatening the very fabric of sacred space. It's the visible intrusion of mortality, decay, and death, attempting to unmake the order of God.
Moving to Section 2, the procedural civilization. The horror of the biological without the covenantal. This brings us to the terrifying stakes of this condition. What happens when a community loses the sacred presence of God? It doesn't just vanish into thin air.
It becomes a procedural civilization. See, the threat of tzara'ath is that it reduces humanity to a sterile, mechanical system. A procedural civilization maintains administrative control, right? It keeps producing, keeps managing, but all while suffering total spiritual collapse and anti-communion. It functions purely on mechanical procedure, even after spiritual death has occurred. It's the horror of the biological surviving without the covenantal.
Notice how the infected individual is portrayed here. They're biologically alive, sure, but covenantally dead. When they get cast outside the camp, they are exiled to what the source text brilliantly calls the backrooms of Israel's consciousness. They become walking ghosts, wandering these liminal wastelands in a sterile continuation of life, totally severed from any living divine purpose.
Okay, Section 3, the heavenly courtroom, navigating the invisible legal disputes of the divine council. We need to step beyond the earthly camp now and apply the heavenly courtroom analysis to see the unseen realm. In the biblical worldview, this visible world is really just a shadow of the invisible divine council.
So, under the corporate ontology lens, the individual and the community actually form a single covenant body. This is absolutely crucial to grasp. An infection anywhere creates a systemic legal vulnerability everywhere. Every earthly covenant breach or contamination, it has a direct, immediate legal parallel in the heavenly court.
The defilement literally provides the adversary with legal standing in the heavenly courtroom. The accuser can point to the corrupted flesh and present a legal argument right before Yahweh's throne, saying, "By your covenant, this contamination cannot coexist with your holiness. I demand their exile."
And this brilliantly illustrates why the priest isn't just a doctor making quick empirical judgments. Actually, he's an epistemic guardian. See, fallen humanity suffers from this epistemological failure. We tend to just judge by autonomous reasoning and visible appearances rather than divine revelation. So the priest is commanded to do 3 very specific things to guard against this. First, to tzara'ath, to observe deeply. Second, to isolate the individual for 7 days. And third, to re-examine the divine reality. He's operating as a legal defender enforcing a boundary, matching earthly verdicts to heavenly legal realities.
Section 4. Cosmic exorcism and anti-temples, the violent architectural purging of chaos. The really crucial point here is that this cosmic battle does not stop at human flesh. It infects the very architecture of reality. The chaos of tzara'ath can literally weave itself into the stones of a house.
A covenant house is meant to be a micro-sanctuary, right? But when an earthly house becomes persistently infected with this active decay, it undergoes a redemptive decreation. It transforms into a rival anti-temple. It becomes a hostile space actively structured against Yahweh's presence.
Applying elimination theology, the priest doesn't just remodel the house.
Restoration demands total removal of whatever threatens sacred space. He acts aggressively. He commands them to literally tear down the walls and demolish the infected stones. Because this isn't a simple construction project, guys. This is a territorial exorcism. The priest ruthlessly breaks down the timber, ripping out all the plaster and the woodwork to ensure absolutely nothing remains. He takes it all and carries it outside the city to an unclean place to purge the land. The physical destruction is absolute, because it violently removes the territorial foothold of the accuser from the sacred space.
Finally, Section 5. The ultimate inverted theater, subverting and humiliating the accuser. Let's see how this all builds into the ultimate subversion of the enemy's plans. God doesn't just purge the chaos, he turns the accuser's own weapons against him. We call this inverted theater. It's this breathtaking divine maneuver where God uses the exact things the accuser claims, the ritually unclean, the dead, the outcasts, to accomplish his redemptive purposes, utterly humiliating the adversary in the process.
The text actually shows us a perfect prototype of this in 2 Kings 7. God uses 4 starving, ritually dead lepers who are trapped in a threshold space, the city gate. They are totally disqualified by Levitical law, existing in that exilic anti-communion outside the camp. Yet God chooses these exact liminal agents to discover the enemy's defeat and become the very first heralds of salvation to a dying city. It's incredible. And this entire architectural map points directly to the ultimate Christological weaponization. Jesus deliberately steps into this fallen, procedural reality of ours. He enters the heavenly courtroom as both the perfect defender and the sacrifice, and he willingly crosses the threshold to suffer outside the gate, absorbing the tzara'ath of our cosmic rebellion right in the accuser's own realm.
The ultimate inversion happens right here. The cross, which was intended by the adversary as the final, absolute decreation, is flipped. God weaponizes it through inverted theater, turning the instrument of death into the very door of new creation. It disarms the accuser, satisfies the legal claim in the heavenly courtroom, and permanently ends the cosmic exile for humanity.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought about how you perceive your own place in this cosmic geography. Look at your own life through these master lenses. Ask yourself, are you truly participating in sacred communion with a living God? Or are you merely surviving in a procedural reality?